to your daily mobile game sizzle with me, Jon Jordan. So today we're looking at Zynga. So we're going through a series of looking at some of the big mobile game companies and asking what's going to happen for them in 2017. So we've already looked at Glue Mobile, and now we're going to look at Zynga. So Zynga and Glue are actually broadly kind of similar. They've been on the stock exchange and the Nasdaq exchange in the US for many years, and they are both loss-making, and they are both seeing revenues decline. So Zynga is a much bigger company than Glue, and in a sense much more interesting in what's going on there. And 2016 should have been quite a big year for Zynga. So it had two big games coming out. We can see one of them running in the video behind, Dawn of Titans, and also CSR Racing 2. Those games are interesting because they're developed by a company called Natural Motion, which Zynga bought in 2014 for a rather eye-watering $527 million. So quite a lot of money. And those games, obviously, given the Natural Motion was bought in 2014, those games have been a long time coming. So Zynga has kept them, held them back in soft launch while it's been testing them and kind of optimizing them and honing them, because it really wanted to make a big splash with them. So the reason it needs to do that is at the moment it's kind of going through this period where it's other big games, so games like Zynga Poker and Farmville 2, some of its other franchises they're still successful, but they're in decline. So it's kind of revenues which kind of are somewhere between normally $700 and $800 million for the last kind of few quarters have been in decline, and it's consistently been loss-making, and particularly in the last quarter, which was the period of time July to September 2016, had a massive loss, so almost $42 million of loss, and that's on $182 million of revenue, so quite a big loss. And part of that was to do with marketing and launching CSR Racing 2. So it needs some success to turn that situation round. So how did those two games do? So CSR Racing 2 came out at the end of June. So actually those third quarter figures actually were a whole quarter of revenue from CSR Racing 2. So Zynga hasn't said how well CSR Racing 2 has done in terms of dollars, but if a game does more than 10% of its quarterly revenue, it breaks it out and tells you. So we know CSR Racing 2 didn't do 10% of kind of its revenue, so it made less than $18 million. If we look at App Store numbers, actually in terms of top grossing App Store positions, CSR Racing 2's actually done pretty well. It launched into the top kind of top 50-ish, top 60, and it's been around there, certainly in the top 100 in most of the big markets, so the US, the UK, Germany, Canada, those kind of places. So it definitely will have earned money. I mean, I don't know exact figures, I'll be making it up, but I would think in the order of maybe $10 million during that quarter. So pretty good. Probably on that basis, is that enough to justify spending $527 million on Natural Motion? Probably, you'd argue, probably not. So let's move on to Dawn of Titans. So Dawn of Titans is the video running. It's a kind of I guess a more expansive and more anticipated game, I think, than the sequel to CSR Racing, and kind of build on battle a bit with these big titans, and gorgeous looking and interesting, some interesting mechanics in there. So it launched right at the end of the year, launched on the 8th of December. So it's hard to get, we won't get any figures for it until Zynga announces its fourth quarter, so that's the period October to December. It won't announce that until early February, and even when it does, Dawn of Titans will only be less than a month of revenue in there. So we don't really get an idea of how well CSR Racing 2 and Dawn of Titans have done until early May, because we need the January to March quarter. That will be the first quarter where we have revenues from them for the entire month. So that's kind of a long way off. So we've got kind of this time to speculate, really. We can again look at App Store rankings. And Dawn of Titans, maybe didn't launch quite so well as CSR Racing 2, but again, it's in no way a flop and could be seen as a moderate success. So again, it's kind of top 60-ish, dropping down a little bit now, but I mean, Christmas is a weird period, lots of different stuff going on, but certainly top 100, top grossing, again, in all the major markets. So we could be generous and say, yeah, another $10 million quarter game there for Zynga. Again, we could be even more generous and round up the numbers, and we could say for 2017, those two games might add $100 million of revenue to Zynga in that year. I think that would be an exaggeration, to be honest. But these are games as a service, so Zynga can obviously kind of rev them up, get more monetization out of them, spend more money, getting more users. It's a dynamic situation. But the problem for Zynga is it's quite a big company, as we said, potentially up to $800 million of revenue. Adding $100 million is obviously good. To get to $900 million would be good for it. But actually, because its other games are declining, you're kind of seeing the new games kind of coming up and the other games declining, and it's the difference between those two rates that basically will say whether Zynga will be profitable or not in the year. And on that basis, I think people kind of hoped that the Natural Motion acquisition, because it was so expensive, over $500 million, was really going to take Zynga to the next level. I don't think it's done that. I mean, we'll have to wait and see, obviously, until the figures come out. And I think that leaves Zynga in a bit of a quandary for 2017. It had these two much anticipated games that it held back from 2015, put them out in 2016. They don't seem to have made a really big change. They may take it back into profitability for a couple of quarters, which would be great, but it doesn't seem to have turned the company around. And that kind of, I think, leaves Zynga almost like, it's famously, its logo is a dog, and I almost see it's like a dog with two heads. So if you look at the franchises it has some big ones. It had Words with Friends, which is a big word game, but a big reach, but very low monetization. It has the games like Farmville, which is still a $50 million annual franchise, and it has these action games called Action Strategy, like Dawn of Titans. Has another one called Allies and Empires, Empires and Allies, even, they get right around. And that's done okay as well. I mean, that's done probably, again, maybe a $30 million a year game for it. But it's big. The big bulk of its revenue, probably the majority, comes from social casino games. So has Zynga Poker has been around since kind of year dot, since the iPhone was there, and obviously Zynga was a Facebook game, still a Facebook company back then. Still at the moment, it's has a certain percentage of its revenue comes from web games. So about 20% of its revenue comes from web games, 80% from mobile. But the big category for it is social. A social casino has some slot games as well. So it has Strike It Big, and it has a Willy Wonka one it launched, and a Wizard of Oz one. But the big one is still Zynga Poker. So you have this kind of social casino core, and that I imagine will be pretty profitable as a part. And then you have all these other bits and bobs that don't really fit together very well, and loss making. So one thing they could do, I don't know if they would do it, it seems quite radical to me, but you have to make radical decisions at some point. They could split the company into two. So they could have, say, what we call Zynga Social Casino. That company, I think, would be highly prized on the stock exchange. Social casino companies are very valuable at the moment. There was one big deal last year that Playtika was sold to some Chinese investors for $4.4 billion. So that's quite a big deal. I think that the Zynga kind of social casino company, if we call it that, would be profitable. It would obviously it could be a Nasdaq stock. I think potentially, I think it would be more valuable than Nasdaq is than Zynga is at the moment as a stock. So the other problem for Zynga, it floated in late 2011 on the Nasdaq. Its share price, it floated at $10. Its share price has kind of collapsed on that day pretty much, and it's been under what they call underwater ever since, under $10. So its share price at the moment is about between $2 and $3. So the investors don't like it very much. It's seen as a bit of a, in a sense, kind of priced as a bit of a joke stock, really. There's no one expects any growth to come out of it, partly because it's still loss-making, which is why it's important for Zynga to become profitable, because then its shares might, it might never get back to $10, I don't think, but if it can get profitability, that might change the situation a little bit. But for me, I think a more radical solution, I think it needs to basically get rid or split into social casino company and another company that would have all the other bits. So Dawn of Titans, CSR Racing 2. Whether that company would be profitable, the second bit would, I don't know. It may be more sensible to have a fire sale, so it has valuable assets. It has people would want to buy CSR Racing 2, people would want to buy Dawn of Titans, people would want to buy Farmville. Different companies, they could sell those assets off, generate cash, put it back into the social casino, and maybe investors would be happier. The reason this probably this radical decision probably won't be made is because of its IPO. Zynga has still a ton of cash, so it has almost $800 million in cash and equivalents, and so even though it's loss making, it basically can't. It's unlikely it can be loss making enough because it can just keep going because it's got so much cash. And in the end, investors don't really rate it anyway, so it's not like it's going to share prices. I mean, its share prices obviously can go down further, but at the moment, basically, it's valued at its assets. So you wouldn't, it wouldn't be a massive collapse in Zynga stock value. So the CEO's in a nice situation in the sense that he doesn't have to make any decisions in 2017 because he's got enough. He knows he's got enough money to just keep going, and maybe he can just do some operational efficiencies, and maybe he can pull some game out of the hat that will be very profitable for it. But I think at some point with Zynga, whether it's 2017 or 2018, there has to be a decision made about what the company is about. And at the moment, I feel it's very kind of split, very kind of a dichotomy of companies. It's kind of pulling in two different directions, and it would be sensible, I think, certainly for the shareholders, not that Mark Pinchas, who's the kind of chairman and actually owns the voting rights and stuff, so he's really the power behind the throne, and it's his company. What he wants to do with it, who knows? But there we go. That's the interesting situation for Zynga. Thanks for watching your daily mobile game sizzle. Come back tomorrow. As I say, we're going through some of the big mobile games companies. So we're going through EA Mobile and Gameloft, people like that, looking at their strategies, looking at the things that could happen for them in 2017. So if that's your thing, do come back and see what we're talking about, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you again soon.